take a 2% tax over what most countries have now? No, this is an additional tax on top. So, and he's not just taxing like the income of rich people, for instance. He's going to be taxing like their assets and everything. So all their productive investments, all their houses and everything. Going to have a mass bureaucracy to tax all that. That's the distinction here.
Hello, how's it going?
Yeah, pretty good. How about you?
Not too bad. Are we live?
Yes, we are.
Awesome. Well, welcome everyone to another episode of The Remnant. It's kind of a bit lazy about kind of promoting this one early on x.com. So we'll see how many people we get into the space, but I have shared it around to the various back channels that I'm in. So hopefully we get a few people around. But Zulu, obviously, been a couple of weeks since we've caught up officially. How's things been tracking?
Yeah, it's pretty good. So I'm still working on the what's a summary, that's what I'm calling it, of the Rape Gang Inquiry Report by what's his face, Rupert Lowe. Very horrifying stuff in there, but that shouldn't be too difficult to get out in short order. And also with this Gary Stevenson guy we're talking about today, obviously, I decided I wanted to watch his and do like a review of his like a documentary that he just came out with. It's How to Get Filthy Rich with Gary Stevenson. I imagine that'll be quite interesting. And if it's a review, and guess what? Channel 4 lawyers, if you're ever watching this, I'm allowed to use that, actually. I'm allowed to use that on a US website called youtube.com, because the US website called youtube.com follows US fair use rules, so suck it. And I'll tell that also to Jubilee, who still have not released their claim on my video. Your time's ticking. You've got 25 days left to decide what you want to do with it. Do you want to take me to court over what is obviously fair use? That's all I have to say on that.
For sure. So I guess that can be a good kind of jumping off point. So as we obviously touched on, Gary's economics is a fairly popular figure in the modern day kind of political landscape, I suppose. He gets a lot of attention, a lot of clicks whenever he's doing his thing. Did you kind of want to talk us through a little bit, your kind of perspective, how you kind of came to be interested in what he was kind of doing and whatnot?
Well, it seems like, at least from my perspective, he kind of came out of goddamn nowhere, and then suddenly he was on every goddamn like news talk show and everything, talking about like, well, I'm a rich guy, but I want a wealth tax. Like, wow, fucking round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. The first ever wealthy socialist. Who could have seen this coming? What a great gimmick you got there. But I watched his appearance on Piers Morgan earlier today, and I took some notes on it. On like a couple headline points that I think he is kind of sums up his character. So first is that he thinks wealth inequality is intrinsically bad. That seems to be his whole bugbear, which it isn't. And what's really funny is the reason why he thinks that wealth inequality is bad is that it causes poverty. So he thinks the way to solve poverty is to solve inequality, and then there won't be poverty any longer. I suppose, just on that point, what do you make of that one, Monhop?
Well, it's obviously fairly ridiculous. I mean, in one sense, you could definitely argue that wealth inequality, in a certain sense, kind of actually promotes, anti-poverty, right? Or promotes production, which obviously reduces poverty. Because, if nothing else, seeing other people become wealthy, and seeing how they can get rich, hopefully motivates people. If nothing else, motivates people to become better themselves and improve their own lot, because they're like, oh, look what I can achieve. Look at what this other person achieved. Maybe I can do that for myself. And then obviously, you have the pure fact that, obviously wealth inequality is an effect rather than a cause, like in this chain, like it's an end result. So it doesn't really make sense to be like, oh, well, wealth inequality is causing poverty. It's like, well, the result, who has what is, comes after the production, which would, or lack of production that would, result in poverty or non-poverty. So it mixes up cause and effect in this case. Like, sure, I mean, obviously wealth inequality can have downstream effects. I'm not saying it can't. I'm just saying that this specific downstream effect doesn't really make sense to identify because, the production that leads to certain people having X amount of wealth and other people having significantly less than that amount comes prior to, that specific amount of wealth being obtained by them, I suppose.
Yeah, I think my main point on this front of wealth inequality causing poverty is a great point. This gentleman, Per Bieland, picked up this book recently, How to Think About the Economy, a primer. Been reading my way through that.
Great book, by the way. Everyone should read it.
Pretty short book. It shouldn't take me too long to get through that. I was reading a little bit of it yesterday. But he has this great point about how, well, it's wrong to think about, well, what is the cause of poverty? Poverty is the natural state, okay? The real question is, what causes wealth? What causes prosperity? And the thing that causes prosperity is, well, you need that. What does that mean? It means that ends are being attained. It means that value is being produced, right? So it is production that in fact causes prosperity. And so Gary's solution to poverty is to tax the very most productive individuals in an economy. Let's put to aside for a second those individuals who are vastly wealthy because of like state interference and they're an anti-productive class and so on and so forth. Because Gary doesn't think any of those things, right? He doesn't think that the state is anti-productive. So Gary's solution should be able to apply to, okay, well, these people are the ones who produce the most, and they're the people who we want to tax, not just the income of. This isn't an income tax he wants. This is a wealth tax. He wants to tax their wealth. Specifically, he says in certain parts of his Piers Morgan interview that he's upset that they can buy up so many assets, right? What are those assets that the billionaires and the millionaires and these people who he'd want to tax? What are these assets? Well, predominantly, they're productive investments. There's only so many, holiday homes you can buy. Most, for instance, Elon Musk, vast majority of his wealth tied up in the productive investments of Tesla, SpaceX, so on and so forth. It's his companies. So he wants to literally redistribute. He says he doesn't want to redistribute wealth, but he does. He wants to redistribute that wealth away from the very people who have proven that they are able to best manage that production towards the state, which has proven in fact that it cannot manage that production. So that's his solution to poverty, is to kill production. So it seems to me that it just achieves the exact opposite of what he wants, or what he purports to want.
Right. And so one thing I will say as well is I'm highly skeptical of the legitimacy of this guy in a sense that, like, as you said, he seemed to like come out of kind of nowhere and then like immediately be going on like all these huge podcasts and TV shows and stuff. And so that always makes me question, okay, like where did you come from exactly? Like who's backing you, so to speak, so that you can go from pretty much anonymity to like going on big podcasts? Like it doesn't really work that way. I will, like, in his defense, like, I suppose people can, be plugging away in relative obscurity and then they can have like one moment that blows them up. But I just didn't really see that happen with him. I just, like, one day I was like, oh, this guy's, going on podcasts and talking about wealth inequality and talking about how rich people are bad or whatever, so brave, right? So I'm skeptical of his kind of background and where exactly he came from and why he's able to do what he does. But that aside, I do think he is very much a symptom of problem that we've touched on a few times, which is just how, people are, when it comes to economics, people are so willing to just be, led by their emotions, right? This is something we talked about with rent control the other week, is that the people across the political spectrum, basically, more or less regardless of, when I say people, I mean economists, I should say, more or less across the political spectrum, doesn't really matter their methodologies, doesn't really matter their prescriptions. Almost every single economist will say, yeah, rent control is bad. Like it is a very, if you want to solve the problems of, housing being overpriced, rent control is a really, really bad way to do that. And yet it manages to be one of, if not the most popular policies across political spectrum. Doesn't matter whether you're Republican, Democrat, Tory, Labor, Green. It literally does not matter. People across the political spectrum the majority of them will support rent control because it sounds really good. It sounds like, hey, we're making it illegal for people to charge more than what you'd like to charge for your rent. It sounds really good to people, but the second that you do any kind of economic study, when I say study, obviously I'm just learning about economics, you realize all of the problems that are associated with it and how those actually do manifest, in reality. So I think Gary is just another example of that because he, more based off of the stuff that I've seen of him, and I haven't really watched like full podcasts he's been on. I've watched like fairly lengths of him talking. He really does just tap into people's emotions. He says he uses that kind of language of this has been stolen from you by someone. The wealth that these people have accumulated, the rich, they stole it from you. It's yours. It's been taken from you, and you deserve it. It's this very kind of emotive and I suppose possessive kind of language that tugs on people's jealousy and just tugs on their heartstrings in general and gets them to kind of be motivated to quote unquote rise up against the evil capitalists. So I think as much as he's a very bad person, he's also in a sense nothing more than a symptom of a broader social problem, I suppose.
Yeah, it's I think you're entirely correct to diagnose, at least implicitly, this economic fallacy he falls into, which is strange because he says he's the country's best economist on the issue of wealth inequality. It's strange that you'd fall into this fallacy, which is the fixed pie fallacy. He seems to think that, well, when a billionaire is like buying up assets, he says this explicitly, when they're buying up assets, then this is like depriving other people of those assets, which implicitly relies on the idea that when they're buying up these assets, namely productive investments, that they aren't creating more assets in the process. And that's what he doesn't understand, is that these people their wealth is a measure of their productive capacity. So if you tax their wealth, you are taxing their productive capacity. He just doesn't understand the fundamentals of economics at all. I don't know how he managed to be. Maybe he is the best on wealth inequality, because I don't know what a wealth inequality economist means. So maybe he is the best. Maybe it's just a bunk field entirely.
Right. I want to hand it over to some of the hands that are up. I can see Michael obviously has been here since the start, and obviously we've got Sue as well. So let's kick things off with Michael. How's it going, man? Please feel free to jump in.
Yeah, no, I'm doing pretty well. I just bought a ticket to a Ron Paul Institute conference. I'm seeing him in September. My question, it was kind of more theoretical. So I was, as one does, listening to true crime stuff. And there was the case of Armin Meiwes. He was that German guy who connected with another, I think, was he German? He might have been Austrian. I'm not entirely sure. But he connected with that other guy, and they agreed that he would kill and eat the guy. Now, supposedly it was all consensual. So I'm wondering, would that violate libertarian principles? My opinion is that it wouldn't if it's consensual, but I'd like to hear your take.
Yeah, so look, not inherently. Like, you can definitely, if two people sign an agreement where they're like, yeah, the one person is going to kill the other person and then eat them, like that's not in violation of like the NAP. The obvious practical issue is going to be, okay, it's all well and good for someone to like in the abstract be like, yeah, I want to be killed and eaten, and there's a very different thing for them to actually be willing to follow through with that when push comes to shove. So if for whatever reason you wanted to be involved in this practice, you'd want to be pretty darn certain that the person that you're about to kill and eat hasn't had any misgivings, doesn't have any misgivings about you just being about to kill them while they're presumably perfectly healthy. So and it's obviously
it does strike me
hugely unethical, but yeah,
it does strike me that there is a market solution to this, because we've got a certain set of people who have a sexual fetish for being eaten by somebody, and a certain set of people who have a sexual fetish for eating people. Now, what do we love about the market? It brings these sorts of people together, right? So if you're a wealthy cannibal, or a wealthy cannibal-y, I suppose, you could fund some sort of procedure where you have like third parties come in and like adjudicate the whole thing, make sure everybody's of sound mind, and it's like, okay, you can back out at any point, buddy. Have whatever procedures necessary in place so they can back out right up until the last moment where they're snuffed out, and then pass the body gets traded over to the cannibal, and the cannibal can proceed to eat the person. It's obviously this is fairly abhorrent, to want to eat people or want to be eaten by somebody, but it's really not a question of law. It doesn't come into law, really.
Did you want to come back on that at all, Michael?
No, I mean, fair enough. The only thing I will say is I hope that Count Binman in Clackus, I hope he wins. Oh my God, that would be just the funniest thing. I've been paying attention to that, and please God, make that happen.
We're going to bring that up as a talking point in the podcast, so we will get to that.
Perfect.